Welcome back to Highway Through Hellth. We're not a crisis line, we're not a therapy show, and we're not licensed healthcare providers. What we are is a place where lived experience is taken seriously because too many people have discovered the more clearly they speak, the worse they're treated. We share personal experience not to give medical advice, but so that when people encounter the kinds of situations we discuss, they're ready to recognize patterns and respond effectively. This show is about language, power, and what happens when systems stop listening and start translating people into problems. If you've ever felt misheard, mislabeled, or punished for staying coherent under pressure, you're in the right place.
We got a difficult, tricky kind of sort of topic today, I think, because, it really, I sit back and I look at, things from the old prophets and whatnot, and you do some study in here and there, and you look at where they have to stand up when everybody else is saying no, 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 no. And you see those psychology studies where they bring a person into a room who
Oh,
answers a
yeah.
question incorrectly just because the rest of the group is going along with it. All those kinds of weird, quirky things that what we're talking about completely wipes that out because it wipes out so much of that cooperation. You're not after that kind of group approval anymore. It goes away. That stuff really disappears. And now I don't think that I could have learned that whole thing without the suffering. I mean, for me, through the way society had set up what religion is, what churches are, what, all this stuff is supposed to mean, completely different than what happened after that immersive experience happened. So we had this massive gap. And I think what you and I really have been doing for a number of years here is trying to add back in what everybody else keeps trying to take out. And that's especially true of the psych industry, who have come at it with, pathologization, courtroom attacks, whatever that they can do to ridicule and belittle these types of experiences. That's an adds to the defense that we have to guard ourselves against to the rest of society. But it was how is your what do you think about this whole topic?
Yeah,
What's your impression?
for me, well, everybody, I think there's a certain amount of conditioning or social conditioning present to that whole go along to get along thing, and it never sat well with me. I was not ever comfortable. You had mentioned some of those studies, the psych studies, like, where you walk into a room and one line is very obviously longer on the left than the one on the right, but everybody's saying the one on the right, and it'll fall to the one person who's not sort of in on the study to say something else. Whereas I'm the kind of person that would have said something else and been like, no, I'm sorry, but it's obvious the one on the left is longer than the one on the right, or what have you,
Yeah.
because I had realized from a very young age that discomfort, and that could come from being autistic. It could maybe just come from a number of things, but that discomfort in being silent in the moment, versus thinking about
Mhm.
it later and regretting not speaking up, I couldn't live with that. It always made me uncomfortable, and at a point it was like I'd rather take that discomfort in the moment and speak up for what's right and what's truthful, than feel any kind of regret later. And I that has been, just a big thing throughout my life.
Mhm.
And it's not ever something I felt sorry for either. And I know
Right.
that guiding spirit had given me the strength and power to speak up against what was obviously very, very wrong, what was happening with me,
Mhm.
and gave me the wherewithal, I suppose, to go ahead and write to the respective medical boards, and to complain to the congressman, and to complain to anybody that I could think of that had maybe some type of oversight. I mean, going so far as to call UVA DOPS when I realized that this was
Mhm.
a misuse of QHHT, or quantum hypnosis technique, when I was realizing that this was the kind of the depth of something that I wouldn't have not ever thought that people would go so far as to abuse, exploit, to sabotage somebody's healing for the sake of money. But here we are.
Right.
It is, and it really is that they, the pseudoscience of psychiatry is nothing more than an abusive cult. Certainly, I was trafficked from a multi-state identity theft, benefits trafficking, and torture ring with these so-called psychiatrists because they haven't been held up to the color of law. They keep skating by with all this hush money and they just keep paying it because it's so much fraud. I mean, it's just massive fraud. So therefore, they and Big Pharma is in on it, and they just offer massive amounts, to keep these people quiet, and they're happy to take $1 and sell and literally sell somebody down the river. I would not be okay with that, even if I was just somebody to observe it. And I did work in medical coding, and I was starting to see it was all a scam and a scheme. Even then, I just didn't realize how deep the rabbit hole went. And then in seeing that, it was like, well, now I really feel very much strengthened to speak up and out about this because my integrity is not for sale.
Right.
And if it means a little bit of personal discomfort, and for me, it meant literally dying a few times and having near-death and near-death experiences induced and mislabeled by these disgusting frauds from the pseudoscience of psychiatry working off of Nazi framework and eugenics framework. You bet your ass I'm speaking out about that. That is very uncomfortable. And then to, like I say, go back and realize just how far this goes and how long it's been going on, and the fact that there were people who did know and took money to look the other way. I'm horrified by it.
Right.
But I'm also grateful that God has put me in the position to expose it. So it's given me a much larger perspective on this than just what my own personal experience was. Yes, of course, I realize how difficult my own experience was and what I've been through, the miracle I've had, but also the betrayals I've had to move through. But it's given me a much better perspective on Jesus's life and the way that Jesus would have felt about, not being afraid of it, knowing what he was going to walk into and not being afraid of it. And then to see the kind of patterns that Jesus himself has faced and the kind of patterns from the stories in the Bible that really give you the example of what's happening now, this sort of the way that the fraud builds and builds and builds like the Tower of Babel, and it has to come crashing down. And we are seeing that history repeat itself. I saw something interesting, an interpretation in the book of Enoch, that the Antichrist isn't just one person. It is a group of people who may have one person as a figurehead. But when you look at the fall of Rome, when you look at some of the fall of these other civilizations who were worshiping the golden calf, that is really what we see with the World Economic Fund, what we see with a lot of these people who have gathered simply to worship money and materialistic power. So I think it really is a good thing that we have technology to be able to discuss these things and obvious things too, like hearing the trumpets in the sky. I personally heard them before when I was back in Baltimore. I've seen several YouTube videos where you clearly hear that. And I think that sort of person to person, being able to spread the actual word, being able to spread the actual good news, being able to go, now we don't have to walk literally like the apostles had to. Now we have computers. Now we have other options available to us to be able to directly spread the word, across oceans, across nations, and bring this into the modern age, And I think that's important. The Bible didn't stop being true, and God didn't stop being existent in people's lives. It's just that we have
Right.
a certain select group of eugenicists and other evildoers who worship materialistic power and control, who are making their attempts to stop a spiritual awakening and renaissance from happening, but it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I think what hit me about the whole experience was I realized, okay, this is a fusion, so it's really kind of a fusion of spirituality and science. Now, what should scare the crap out of people there is if you get a person who is unethical enough, and you will when you start talking about evil people, who would take that technology and misrepresent a baptism in the Holy Spirit as some type of a scientific principle that I just happened to discover the other day, and it'll come up and you'll heal. All you got to do is sign up, sign your life over to me, and you can come up and get healed
Right.
anytime you want. We'll just keep misrepresenting what it is, and yeah, we're running straight down that road to allowing that to happen. The way we have stigmatized these spiritual experiences, how the courts have already turned against it, how you can just bring somebody in and make fun of them on spiritual grounds and strip away their constitutional, medical, and religious rights in a process that takes maybe 10 minutes, where there is no weighing of evidence, where this is pure speculation. They know it, but it's speculation designed to instill fear and squelch dissent and obstruct
Mhm.
discussion and discourse, which is, that's our biggest enemy. When they can start shutting down our ability to communicate with one another about what these things are, what they mean. And I'm not a fearmonger, but to your point, the magnitude of these experiences are pretty much impossible to describe. And who talked about hell more than anyone else in the Bible? Well, that was Jesus. So don't think that these places don't exist. If you think evil doesn't exist, I think you better think again, because the minute you have one of these immersive experiences, you'll see it. And you want to go to hell, you can go there. Just go look around, go have at it. It's not a pleasant thing, but if it's
Yeah.
not there, then you are a slave, aren't you? So,
Yeah.
when you really get into this notion of dissecting what deception is, the caustic role that it plays in everyone's lives, why it's absolutely banned, which is why we try and use the suffering kind of as representative of the 0 point. That's the point we had to go to that was way above and beyond what we were exposed to get us ready for the magnitude of the spectacularness of the experience that we eventually had. Um, because we weren't taught that. You weren't taught that from at your young age. I wasn't taught it from. I know that if that were a common concept out there, I would have heard about it. I haven't heard about it. I didn't hear
No.
about it until it happened to me. And then the minute it happened to me, then everybody comes after you. So then you start realizing, okay, we have a real big problem here. And the other thing it gets into is things like fanaticism. I guess when people don't understand that you will put your life on the line before you lie, you'll say, no, I'm not going to engage in that whatsoever. That's not being a fanatic. That's actually opens the door to more and more spiritual energy. And the more you pour on punishment to a person who realizes that, the more they're going to just lean into it because that's just tackling fuel. All the stuff we're doing at Iran is completely backfiring because that's exactly the kind of mindset that a big chunk of that develops with the suffering and all that, whether you realize it or not, whether you think it's correct or not, it really doesn't matter. These are emotions that come about. You need to really consider this Isaiah 65 thing when you can do stuff by accident, going by the feelings and not by the words in front of you. So, you're really people just don't understand what this is. And no, you cannot put enough pressure on me to get me to renounce what I've talked about, written about, what I continue to do, and what I plan on doing really until the day I die, because it's very beneficial. We're talking about a psychological thing here. We're talking about relieving people of mental illness. We're talking about deep, deep empowerment, um, a breaking of bonds. We are not talking about your grandpa's, version of something I can't even relate to. I mean, the
Yeah.
vast majority of people that talk about Christianity, spirituality on TV, wherever, I can't relate to what they're trying to tell me. Because, and how do I gauge them? It's very simple. Do they believe you have to wait for your body to die or not? And if they're the people that say you have to wait for that, they're the people that typically have messages that really de-emphasize the nature or the importance of fighting deception. You know, they miss the spectacularness, I guess, of the practice. So, you know, how do we, when you think of Revelation, you think of churches like Ephesus, you think of, you know, you lost your first love. Well, what was the first love? Well, I added back in, you know, this notion that of not waiting, of the immersive experience, which is literally not waiting for your body to die before you have that rebirthing event. You add that back in, and a whole bunch of stuff starts falling into place. It starts making sense because then all those different churches, oh, this society will try and influence your thinking in this way, just like the chalkboard thing, right? With the two lines that you were mentioning. And every single one of those would represent a different kind of environment that's going to challenge you and see if it'll knock you off your program. If you can make it through all those, then you know you're pretty solid and you're pretty stable, which gets back to what we're trying to explain to people is that peace that surpasses all understanding. So now our question is, how do we get the point across? Because it really kind of boils down to that big hump, doesn't it? We got to get past that one way or another.
I think that we are also seeing a lot of other people, and this includes scholars. This includes people who have studied spirituality. This includes people who have studied archaeology and spirituality. This includes a number of people from the scientific community as well as the spiritual community. Who have really started to see that link with that, and health people as well, you know, legitimate like health people as well. So we have people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, certainly Dr. Roger McFillin speaks about this beautifully. A couple other authors that I know who talk from the science and bring it into the spiritual and the aether, and a lot of things that Tesla talked about, frequency, vibration, a lot of things that us being eternal energy and how that all clicks into it as well. And I've looked to, and some of the numerical things in the Bible are now starting to make a lot more sense to me as I've been looking at some of these other things with frequency, with vibration, with the Schumann resonance. Also just what patterns are. Being autistic, I'd like to see how patterns work and Venn diagrams, and having been a lifelong student of comparative spirituality and comparative religion, seeing how all that fits in between the Kabbalah, and then you have the ancient Norse religion and the ancient Celtic religion, and others as well, but that's two that I'd studied fairly extensively also. And to me, like when you see like when it mentions the seven churches in Revelation, there's also seven deadly sins. And it's in having to confront that within yourself. And then when you think about, 6 degrees of separation, I think that seventh one is where you meet yourself, where you see reflected back to yourself, maybe either the things that you've needed to overcome or things that you haven't quite overcome. And that's where you kind of meet your match and how you ascend. I really think that there is definitely something to that, that we have to meet that challenge, because we do plan our lives with God.
Kind of like what we're saying, your practice has to meet, no matter what way you're going, your practice has to meet, whether it's, everything's going real well or all hell's coming down on you. Are you, peaceful in either one of those circumstances?
Yeah.
And it's possible. It's possible, which is,
you have to confront it within yourself, because hypocrisy has no place in anything. So you have to confront it within yourself to be able to confront that in other people, and do it in a way that isn't all this, yelling and screaming and all this, but you have to just be firm in it. You can be respectful of somebody else and completely disagree, and completely have strong boundaries and defend yourself and say, no, that's not okay. This is not okay. I can remember when my ex spit on me and I just wiped it off. I said, I'm not okay with this because I
Yeah.
knew that by any other reaction, he was going to say she's acting crazy and going to call, his little cronies over there to come,
Right.
sweep me up for another phony baloney, but yet quite lucrative
Hmm.
hospitalization because how dare I stand up for myself? But
Right.
this is the sort of, box that they will paint people into, or attempt to anyway, so that you have no right to stand up for yourself. Anything that you say, they want to try and twist, manipulate, maneuver into their favor. And that is all the pseudoscience of psychiatry does. It is a cult. Uh, and
Yep.
it needs to stop, and it needs to be looked at as such. The fact that they have misused, perjured themselves in court multiple times, committed billions of dollars worth of fraud.
Hmm.
That's unconscionable and it's inexcusable, and particularly going after people with spiritual practices like ourselves, like indigenous folks, and that's been going on for centuries,
Yep.
really. It all needs to stop, and I think this is where we come in with confronting that with facts and saying, listen, there is nothing wrong with a spiritual practice, and what is happening with the pseudoscience of psychiatry is not only unconscionable, it's unconstitutional. You have the right to be free from false accusations as well as torture. And chemically inducing somebody to be forcibly drugged with known carcinogens and known torture drugs. They
Hmm.
are known to damage the brain, destroy the nervous system. The same thing with the electrocutions because they are brutal. I
Yeah.
have more brain damage from that than I did from the seizures, and that was bad enough. And the fact that that was
Wow.
done to me intentionally, I'm not ever going to be okay with it. But I have learned to put it into perspective because I do see the larger picture for myself, and I do see myself healing from it. Am I going to have the same capacity I did before? God can work miracles. God can do anything.
Right.
So I won't say
Right.
no, but I will say that it has, I have a lot more difficulty now than I did. Um,
Hmm.
and furthermore to that, the depth of the betrayal and the fact that people did that to me intentionally over my
Right.
known will and wishes hurts me so damn bad that I do lack words for that. But the fact that I'm able to speak up and out about it, the fact that other people can hear my story, can hear I'm not some sort of, cuckoo, that these folks,
Right.
this is what they're doing. This is fraud. They are intentionally hurting people for money. And
Hmm.
it is important that's known and that people are allowed to have to be their individual selves that God has created them to be. We're not out to hurt anybody, nor are we out there saying, well, we want money. We're not these prosperity preachers or
No.
nothing of the sort. We're
No.
genuinely people who have had real spiritual experiences, and we've talked to others who have had real spiritual experiences and are now trying to put that into perspective and into a wider community to be able
Hmm.
to move forward and to make the world a better place, not
Right.
to enrich our pockets, but to enrich people's lives, to enrich one another's lives. And there is a major difference right there.
Absolutely.
And that guy that talked about the what a cult is, that cult expert, who stated that a religion is supposed to be there to serve its congregants. When the congregants are then there to serve any kind of leader, that's a cult.
It
And
is.
and that's a very good definition of exactly what the pseudoscience of psychiatry is too.
Absolutely. They're putting themselves in a position of authority and they're doing it over all things spiritual, which is even more crazy given that they generally don't believe in it. And so when we get kidnapped, I mean, here we're people that have gone, we know what suffering does. We know it wipes out double-mindedness. We know it destroys fear. We know you're not going to be able to shame people into things. We know we're not going to just go along to get along. We know absolutely the worst tactic that you could use to try and manipulate us is coercion. But that's what that entire system is built around, is to coerce you into saying, "Oh yeah, I had a problem, and those drugs fixed it, or that shock fixed it. I'm better now. Thank you so much, doctor." And then they'll finally let you go, maybe if they can't exploit your insurance even more. So it's a real, as it exists today, it's an incredibly dangerous place for a person like you or I to exist just because they are so out of control. They are so hostile, and they don't really have, well, we know for a fact they don't have the data to back up the
Right.
amount of authority that they've managed to accrue. Certainly not through honesty, certainly not through results, certainly not through people that say, boy, I'm going to recommend my friend to these people because they really help. I mean, that's the last thing that happened. I would never go to those people.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that made us, for me, I banned them from using on my health directives. I banned the mental health people from ever getting involved in anything that has anything to do with my health care. If I find out they're in it, even in a secret way, I'll quit dealing with the doctor that I'm dealing with. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to put up with it, not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
I've been through enough with it. I don't need their opinion. I've
Yeah.
got my own facts. The
Right.
healing that I got, the healing that you got, you can't make that up. I know what a wheelchair is. I know what not being in a wheelchair feels like. I know, how long it's been since that's happened.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot about it that I've been through it. I know. And yeah, a lot of what we're doing, I tell people my attitude on it is the vast majority of stuff that I'm working on today, no one's going to appreciate till after I'm dead. So you just do it, you go through it, you plow through it, and you get it over with. Because really the big chunk of what we're doing is breaking up stigma.
Yeah.
And it's stigma that really had no business existing. It's stigma that's grown out of a corrupt and abusive kind of financial system that supports a pretty corrupt and abusive workspace. It's into this whole notion of what is creation? Where does intelligence come from? What's this intellectual property system really doing for us when all those ideas are already out there in the first place? Is it being used to trap wealth into a small cadre of a handful of people who then everybody else might get a little bit of crumbs? I feel like that is what we've done. I feel like trickle down has been an absolute disaster because what we've left at the top is a pile of scumbags who are controlling everybody's access to capital, which controls access to life, which controls access to building and existing and doing all the things that's, fun about life.
Right.
If you're a builder or you want to express yourself in some way, shape, or form, you got to sit around and, what do you have to do before you can get a little bit of money to do the things that that you're really good at? So this is what's killing us. It's killing our productivity. It's killing our entrepreneurship. It's killed our small businesses. It's killed our middle
Yeah.
class. And that's really what this psych
The
industry
arts
and
as well.
yeah, and I think that's what the biggest accomplishments that these people can really point to is disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, they have wanted to create such an environment as that, and that's why I've long said, and I can even remember saying to Sandy before she had passed, she was raising my cousin, she was my birth mom, and we were very close. We would talk about, does it seem like the end times are coming?
Mhm.
Simply because the amount of what you had said, that huge amount of power and wealth concentrated with a very small number of people, and it has brought down civilizations before. And
Yep.
there are too many people who have made the mistake of thinking, well, it won't happen in the modern day. Bullshit. That's what
Right.
they're counting on. They count on those bullshits like that
Yep.
to continue the lie, and that it doesn't lead anywhere good. This is why we've had extraterrestrial influence with the the possible nuclear wars, how that's come about a few different times. And
Mhm.
again, this is part of why we're going to see the exposure of all this happening with the disclosure of UFO UAP. because that's all intertwined as well. And I feel like we've already kind of passed the tipping point on a lot of that, and people are seeing the interconnectivity, because people realize, God didn't just create this planet, God created the entire universe, and mankind is the only species arrogant enough to think they're the top of the food chain. I mean, we can't even figure out how to solve poverty, although we could figure out how to solve poverty. It's just that some people don't want to because they're so egoic and greedy and materialistic, and they can't give that up because they have not faced in themselves the things that are bothering them. They are trying to fill a black hole with money, and you can't do it.
Right.
You can't do it. You've got to make yourself whole through confronting the things within yourself that have been hurts, that are allowing you to still hurt other people, and to not feel that complete empathy, and then to sort of tap into that telepathy that comes from that kind of being able to place yourself in another person's shoes. And we really are getting to that point. And I think we've already reached it. It's just that we have some of the people, including those in the pseudoscience of psychiatry, who the money wielders and the puppeteers of the WEF and others, are really pulling the strings through the corrupt corporations, through places like Johnson and Johnson. So they're money laundering a lot through the big pharma. That's another piece of that puzzle. And that should have been stopped a long time ago. And I'm glad that this is all being exposed. I'm very glad that more than once I've told people I'm not taking hush money. That's a no-go. You can keep that. I told that one lawyer that called that time, I said, "You really think money's going to make up for what I've been through?" Ha, ha, ha. And then he pretended like he couldn't hear me. I'm like, yeah, because you don't want to. You don't want to hear me. And I'm glad that a lot of these cases recently from Maryland that involve some of the same institutions that were deliberately harming me, deliberately lying about me, deliberately colluding with a known domestic abuser who was getting paid to do so. They were calling this research on an autistic woman on coercive control. They know they were doing it. I know they were doing it. And they were all getting paid for it. They know that this is going to have to be what's going to come out in the court. They already know this. I'm talking about it openly, but they already know that I would go to a court of law, but they're scared because it's going to set precedent. Well, guess what? All these cases that are coming up that the Supreme Court is getting ready to hear now, about a couple of them, Shepard Pratt and PIW, or Psychiatric Institute of Washington in particular, because they took out life insurance policies on people and killed them. And that's what's going to come out. I know they don't want that coming out, but that really is just tough shit. They shouldn't have been doing that. That's murder for money. And these are all things that people have already long known have been happening. And the more that these venture capitalists take over nursing homes, group homes, all this other stuff with these lies that force people to be dependent, well, that's what they do. They take out life insurance policies and kill these people.
Don't think it doesn't happen, because
it does.
It
does.
It's pretty easy when you're in a when you're in a compromised health situation. First of all, when I was kidnapped into the place that I was, Pine Rest in Grand Rapids, which is just beyond scummy, that place, had zero concern whatsoever that I had no immune system. I told them that a few times. I'm like, I'm on immune suppressants. I don't need to be in with other people. This is everything I didn't want, right? This is, where do most people get MRSA? In a hospital.
Yes.
You look at all the things that are going on, and what do? Exacerbate every flipping one of them. No, we're going to put you in with this person. No, we're going to put you in that person. Some of those people were just kind of, I really didn't want to get into it, but I'll do a whole lot in TLP 4 and 5. But this was a structured, I don't want to even say there was no legitimacy to it, but it was a very structured approach at how to bill.
Yes.
And every outcome, because it's subjective, it doesn't matter what you say. It's going to be interpreted as pathology. And all they needed was some goofy little thing to make fun of you over. And that's what they would do. So if you're in having a spiritual experience, they'll make fun of that.
Oh
There
yeah,
was a few people in the my comments that were, it was way out of line as far as I'm concerned. Some of the stuff they were putting down and misrepresenting. Some of the records were completely falsified. Were writing things in there that absolutely did not happen.
yeah,
But hey, when the same industry are the people that investigate the licensing and regulatory affairs complaints, when it's another psych person, they're just going to say, well, that's standard of care. I meet standard of
yeah.
care. There's nothing wrong with that. They didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do
Right.
anything wrong. And then they demand, if you can find an attorney who will take a case, they're only going to
Yes.
take it if you're going to pay them a fortune or if they're going to win a fortune. And then if you aren't willing to settle out of court, they're not going to take your case. So that's
Yep.
another way that these people avoid justice, is because they refuse
So,
to go to court.
yeah.
The whole thing has got this status quo to where this is a topic that's not going to court. We're going to keep it up. We're going to keep abusing people. We're going to keep scamming the system. We're going to keep doing all this kind of stuff, calling it medicine, hoodwinking the public, and there we go. And yeah, it's a very hostile environment for me
Yeah.
and for you too, I'm sure, and a number of other people I've talked to since that happened to me. So
Yeah.
y-
And
you
the
know,
states have taken hush
we
money
do what
too.
we do.
Yeah, the states have
Oh,
taken
yeah.
hush money too. Huge settlements. I mean, the ones that I've been going after, and by the way, they've been on the radar for decades. No lie, decades for grant fraud, grant theft, misuse of public funds, all manner and number of things, identity theft and fraud, all kinds of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And they paid the state like I don't know, it was 4 million or maybe more than that. Maybe it was quite a bit more than that. I don't remember now. It's written down somewhere. But they paid the state settlement money, hush money. And I
Yeah.
thought, shame on you, state of Maryland. Shame on you. You don't give a shit about your residents at all. I am so
Well,
glad to be out of there. I really am. They are the most corrupt state as far as I'm concerned. They get all that buku bucks in Southern Maryland where the politicians and
mhm.
a lot of the richy riches live, who lobbyists and influencer kind of things and all this, which shouldn't be happening. And that's where
Right.
they live, and they don't give jack shit to Central Maryland. They don't care. They use everybody there, particularly the black and brown population and the red bone population, like myself, as just nothing but
Mhm.
lab rats. And I'm more than a little tired of it. That once upon a time things were built on industry. Well, now everything is this supposed healthcare. Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
It's Rockefeller sick
Yeah.
care, and they know it, and they know they can just bring people in and start donating their organs through Hopkins. And Hopkins supposedly has this wonderful reputation. Well, all you got to do is scratch the surface. Look at the night doctors, Henrietta Lacks, all kinds of other shit they've been pulling. The things they pull with Kennedy Krieger, to have the kids eating lead paint and trying to make
Mhm.
it look good for the landlords. They're still doing that. They're still doing it, but on a larger scale. Like with me, there was black mold in the one apartment building
Yeah.
I lived in, and they were blaming on anything but that. Shame on them.
Right.
Shame on them.
Yeah. It's that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about this thing about honesty, we're saying that you're honest no matter what it costs you. So,
Yeah.
we don't talk about that as far as a hear it. I don't hear it taught I don't hear it taught in churches. I don't hear it taught in schools.
No.
So it really gets back to that. If you don't understand that this whole thing is about provoking an immersive experience that'll completely blow your mind, that the what is being talked about is way bigger than anything that you likely have ever experienced or heard of, and that absolutely there is an industry that has been spooled up that we are forced to fund, that is dedicatedly hostile to the types of things that we talk about. They will strip you of your constitutional, medical, and religious rights. They will throw a label on you that allows you to be picked up for any reason whatsoever. Basically, if you say some stray thing to somebody, they'll say, "Oh, that person's a paranoid schizophrenic. We're going to go lock them up,
Mhm.
and they're in a safe place. Don't worry about them. It's okay. Well, we got them locked away, so don't ask any questions. Everything's fine." Those are the kind of things that absolutely do go on. They will go on. It did happen to me. So I know it's not something that's impossible. And it happened in the face of evidence that they refused to consider. So I also know what the whole attorney thing is like. I offered $50,000 cash to anybody who would take my case. Yeah, I had it too. I could have written them a check too. And no, they were scared to death. They
Yes.
refused. And the minute, to me, I'm saying, you know what? This experience means I'm going to have to be standing up for God in a courtroom. Oh, you think you can find an attorney who will stand up for God in a courtroom? Good flippin' luck. That won't happen. Not in today's America, not with the psych cult and the way they have twisted consciousness, the way they have misframed it, the way they have really made everything that's helpful to us a pathology.
Yeah.
And
They
you
want to
think,
call us delusional while they do all the fraud, and that's
right.
actually why I'm so glad that I have evidence. My identity was
Hmm.
stolen. They know this, and
Yeah.
I tried to report it to the state once upon a time. They know that this is a multi-state identity theft fraud ring, credit line, credit card fraud ring. They did mail theft on me, mail misdirection, interference with my phone, messing all that up so I couldn't, and falsifying that things were coming from me, it was coming from them in order to perpetrate this benefits trafficking and
Hmm.
kidnapping. And they knew this too, and it's tied in with real estate fraud and money laundering, wire fraud, all kinds, everything that you can imagine from organized crime is tied up with this. And I thought, you know what, I can take the personal hit, to be able to help
Right.
expose this on a bigger level and talk about it, because regardless of they had no right to misuse past life regression hypnotherapy on me. They had no right to do that at all. They
No.
had no right to leave me with a known domestic abuser and fraud, ringleader and
Hmm.
psych fraud at that level and call it research. That
Right.
is so against Nuremberg Code. That is so against every kind of law. And then, like I said, stealing my devices, stealing my credit cards, all
Hmm.
of it, stealing my identity. That's huge fraud. And I'm glad that I'm able to speak up and out about it because somebody had to. And I know I'm not the only one that did.
Right.
It's just a matter of making sure this is exposed somehow. And that's why I refuse to
Hmm.
take a dime for it. I don't want to. If somebody at some point wants to give me, money to help me rebuild my life, I'm not going to tell them no. But this Cherokee bitch is not going to shut her mouth for it. That's
Yeah.
that's for damn sure. That's
I
for
mean, I don't
damn
even have a donate button at the Lupus Project. I don't ever intend to put one there. I
sure.
haven't done it that way because I know that just generally the language that has to be employed is so combative, not because I want it to be combative, but because the industry has made it that way. The industry has stacked the deck to the point where if you don't let them know that you're willing to fight for what you believe in, they were going to run over your ass. And because they can make a lot of money doing that, and they're not going to think twice about it. We've built that into the system. We've turned those people loose. We refuse to hold them accountable. We throw gobs of money at them, and they're ruining everything they touch. Yet we
Yeah.
won't hold them accountable. I heard Nick Shirley the other day. He said that a congressman mentioned to him that he saved so much money exposing just the fraud that he did on hospice that the Iran war was
Yeah.
totally free. So, you know what? That keep going. You haven't even
Yes.
touched the psych industry yet.
Yeah.
Haven't even touched it. And when you start looking into these kidnap drug places, what they do, how they operate, what their assumptions are, how they treat people, how they deal with spiritual experiencers, how the courts have been just they're as absolutely as corrupt as the practitioners at this point. And we're done. We're done with this whole notion of this is some kind of a thing that good faith. I think they use good faith as a reason to avoid legal culpability for a lot of the stuff that they pull off. But there's nothing good faith about this.
Oh
This
no,
is a mm-mm. So,
no. This is human
we're not even,
experimentation.
yeah, we haven't even taken the gloves off the fraud in healthcare, and that, because we've turned it into a make work project for apparently
Yes.
the lowest common denominator in society, we just throw them into places like this. And when you can make it above average money, doing the things that they do, this kidnapping, forced drugging, mischaracterizations, pathologization of spiritual experiences, because hey, that's funny, right? Let's laugh at this person who's been through all this. Let's just pile it on because, you know, we're so caring, and that's how we demonstrate it. I mean, it really doesn't take much to scratch up through the hypocrisy layer with the psych industry and get down to what they really are. But oh no, we're just going to keep going, keep funding them, keep giving them ridiculous amounts of cash. And I actually thought that the notion that the way they crossed over into spiritual experiences so hard and so blatantly would have provoked a lot more calls for change, but it hasn't. And that's another thing that's really scary when you talked about the end times, because yeah, you do wonder when are you going to care enough to care about the things that matter?
I think
That's the
it's
question I
because
guess
of
I have.
it's the media manipulation. And people have been so roundly just brainwashed by this constant, lies from the
Hmm.
pseudoscience of psychiatry, and really even prior to the marketing of these torture drugs, and that's what they are.
Right.
And people need to look at it. These are eugenics drugs. They were
Hmm.
simply rebranded and marketed here, and you throw a lot of this money, and a lot of it is laundered Nazi money, that went through big pharma, because these companies are directly tied to all that. Um,
Hmm.
and when people start looking at the facts of it that way, as opposed to the lies that have been told, when people go back and start looking at that, it's horrifying. And I can't imagine that the average person is comfortable whatsoever, because there's a reason why these shootings, mass shootings, have gone up so incredibly. There's
Hmm.
a reason why
Right.
overdoses have shot up exponentially, and yet
Hmm.
there this fraudulent psych industry wants more money for what? More damage? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Science, if you look at the actual data, I mean, it's just easy to see that the more money they get, the worse things get. Suicides
Yeah.
increase. And
Hmm.
I know I'm the only one that I've ever wanted to hurt, because I had such a terrible life and wanted to figure out how to get away from all of that and move on. But yet, the pseudoscience, the psych industry, ooh, they like their little lab rat. Fuck
Oh
them.
yeah, they
I'm so
do.
angry
Hmm.
about that. I'm angry about being placed where I was going to be sexually abused as an experiment, from the time I was an infant up until I was 5 years old. I'm so fucking angry about that. I'm not happy
Yeah.
about that whatsoever. And they knew that this guy who had ties to the FBI, who was directly related to one of the Manson family, they knew what he was up to. He was doing this to his own children. And yet,
Right.
yeah, and yet there he was monitoring everybody's calls and everything else, just because he had it in good with some people, and some of those folks are sick freaks that are pedophiles. So they
Hmm.
get into that, and then you see somebody like an Epstein. So none of that is a surprise to me,
No.
that he had so many ties and so much compromise. None of this surprises me, because I've seen what it was. I grew up with it. Unfortunately, the dude was right there on the corner of our street. I've seen this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not comfortable. And yet you have these soulless people who run these hedge fund companies and these insurance companies, just denying people because it's good for their bottom line. But that's the kind of people that are in charge of things. That's the kind of people that are out there and pulling your purse strings, and it's not
Hmm.
okay. And I do think that when people start to make the connection that anybody who's having legitimate trauma from losing their job, not being able to afford their home, not being able to afford food through no fault of their own, but from the way things are set up, And
Right.
people are mischaracterizing that, intentionally mischaracterizing that, and forcing them to take eugenics drugs. It's got to stop. And then forcing children onto it. My God, I don't want to hear about another child or infant, for that matter, forced onto these cancerous eugenics drugs like the ones Johnson
Right.
and Johnson fucking pushes. I'm so tired of that. And they know that they're doing it. It's sick. It's depraved. And it just needs to be exposed for the depravity, the greed, and just the fraud that it is. Because when people realize, my God, they are deliberately harming children for the sake of their own pocketbooks, for the sake of their own grandiosity, they're going to be sickened. They're going to be
When you
sickened.
deny evil exists, you quit looking for it,
That's
right?
it.
And
That's it.
then but man, when you realize it does exist and it has telltale signs, and the biggest one is deception, what's somebody's relationship to truth. If they have an absolute relationship to truth, you can trust them. When somebody
Yeah.
wavers even a little bit, you know that at some point they're going to give in, right? There'll be a point where they will cave. They will throw your life away or somebody else's life away to save theirs. That's the kind of person they are. The minute you touch that, the minute you use it, the minute you engage in it, if you have not completely and totally renounced it and got rid of it, and then develop the bravery inside yourself that you need to take on the stuff that people are going to throw at you when you start telling the truth and standing up for universal rights and doing the things that you and I have been doing, you know, it's not a cakewalk. And that's what
Right.
I'm saying. This got me ready. That's the prerequisite. So
Yeah.
I don't look at it as a tragedy. I look at it as a prerequisite. And I'm saying we have really got to figure out this process. We've got to stop denying that these immersive events are real, that they are scientific, that they're not pathologies, that they're not stuff to ridicule people. There's certainly nothing to kidnap anyone over, and there's certainly nothing to ridicule them in court over. And you start saying, when is this reform going to come? Well, I think you and I are pretty sure that never. When you leave it to the industry
Right.
itself, we know that. We know they don't reform. We know they don't lift a finger to reform. They're in there, this is their manufacturing job, and they're manufacturing bullshit on behalf of pharma and stripping your rights away to do it. So there you go, and you're forced to pay for it. And I still have to deal with, I still view that entire industry as a threat to my healthcare. I still
Oh,
have
yeah.
to say I don't want those people in here. I still have to say very clearly, do not involve those people on my healthcare team at all, under any circumstances whatsoever. And I mean it. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No.
after I moved, I made it very clear. I said, listen, I came out of a trafficking situation. I was medically abused, and I was
Mhm.
experimented on. I don't appreciate it. And I even
Yeah.
told him, I said, I don't give a rat's ass if you give me Medicare B or not, but don't fucking charge me for it, because I ain't going to use it. I said, I assure you, I said, I take care of my own health care at this point.
Yep.
Thank you so very much. I said, I didn't deserve to go through that. And I had to tell them, I said, my identity was stolen. I said, all of this. I said, I don't appreciate the kind of things I've been through from supposed medical people back in Maryland. So I made that real clear,
Right.
because
Right.
I'm just not going to go to any traditional doctors at this point. Everything's owned by a corporate. I'm not comfortable unless I can go to a spiritual practitioner, a DO, perhaps a chiropractor. But I thank you, Jesus. I
Yeah.
don't need any of that at this point. I can deal with my lupus. I can deal with my heart problems. I can deal with my autism. I just need people to, give me my own space. That's it. I need the money to pay my rent,
Right.
and I can do that, and I
Mhm.
can pay for my own food. I want to be able to set up my own business. I do want to be able to help build a framework for this for other people
Mhm.
who have come out of this psych abuse, who have come out of all this kind, from domestic
Yeah.
abuse, from people who are neurodivergent who have been abused by the system, because it happens a lot to neurodivergent women, a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and anybody who's been harmed by these drugs and looking to deprescribe, or even people who are just looking for a support system to do things differently, who have had, particularly those of us who have had near-death experiences.
Yeah.
How do we now, after an immersive experience, be able to be sure that we're not harassed by these psych freaks, and be able to commiserate with one another to build a better, build a good support system for ourselves and help build a better world, period.
Exactly.
How can we now put all that into an action that benefits people who haven't had the exact experiences we've had, but want to know more about it, want to understand better. And I definitely know that we're doing that. So
Yeah.
it really is a matter for me. How can I then make that a larger piece of the puzzle? I don't want to hear another story like what happened with Nick Reiner. That broke my heart. I had the biggest crush on Rob Reiner for years, and I just adored him. And to know that he wanted his son to have help for the meth addiction he had, for the other issues he was having, and all that is available is the drugging of the psych industry, and that's a fucking shame. That should not happen. Catherine Short should still be with us, Martin Short's daughter. She worked in the industry and ended up committing suicide. And I am absolutely certain it's because she knew that there is no help available for somebody. That there's just medical kidnapping and forced drugging, and none of it's good. And that breaks my heart too. So it's things like that that make me that much more determined to bust this complete myth down and to make sure that other things are in place that actually do work, are helpful, acknowledge suffering, acknowledge the damage that's been done. How do we do that better? How do we bring actual meaning into people's lives that don't involve this pharmaceutical bullshits and harms that come with it, and not addressing actual issues and helping people work through whatever issues they may have, addiction, all of it. There are ways of dealing with it. It's not about adding more misery to it with further chemicals that deplete your dopamine and cause brain damage. I don't know why even people think that that's a good idea to begin with. It obviously is not. It's not.
Who knows? I know Jerry Marzinsky did a really good episode on his work with meth addicts and what some of these voices told people to do, and they were extraordinary. He was convinced it's demonic because there is absolutely no way these people who are hearing these voices could have known certain things were going on in certain places. I mean, following voices in their head to a hours away up a deserted road in Oregon to find a marijuana patch so you could steal from it and come back. Now, how the hell did somebody with absolutely no tie-in whatsoever to a remote area like that know that that was going to go on? Not only did it once, did it several times. I think it's engineering consciousness. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry. I know it's Jerry Marzinsky, but you look him up, and that's a pretty powerful episode. And yeah, when you're talking about Rob Reiner's kid, he's into meth. Okay, you got a demonic element going on here. It isn't funny. You have to really work with somebody to get him out of that and getting him into a place where honesty is comfortable in a world where dishonesty is what moves you forward. That can be a challenge. You really have to give people experiences so that they can remember what those emotions that they've completely lost contact with feel like again. If they get that, then they can get over the meth. If they don't get that and they don't understand they're messing with demons and they're turning their body over to demons in some cases, that's a problem. And in Rob Reiner's case, is anybody going to look at that when you send them to the psych industry? Hell no. They're going to say, "Oh, we're just going to drug you harder, and we'll do this, and go to an NA meeting, and we'll see you next week."
Yeah, and
what's that
that's
going to
the
do?
sad thing. Here he is now in jail, and obviously is going to have a lot of emotion over what happened, but they keep drugging him. And I thought, I can only imagine his poor father and mother on the other side must be grieving extra because seeing the same exact thing that led to their murders still happening to their child, and now he's being murdered slowly. This is not okay. It's not okay. At any level is this okay. That is nothing more than an industry of death, and it has to stop. It has to stop. There are other ways of going about this that don't involve killing people or drugging people to such a degree that they then don't even know what they're doing or have some idea of what they're doing. But then when they come to their senses, they're absolutely devastated by the destruction they've wrought. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. It is removing any kind of actual conversation, any kind of actual responsibility, and putting all their faith in these chemical concoctions, which are nothing more than neurotoxic poisons. And it's horrible.
They don't work.
No.
They don't work.
It doesn't work at all.
All right. We've done another hour. Time's flying. Thank you.
It goes quick. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. I'll get busy on this, and we'll just keep on going until we'll just keep on going. This is fun. Thank you, Dana. It's good talking to you again. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Same here, hon. Keep cool.
Yep. All right. You take care. Have fun up there. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.